Welcome everyone to ICAN. Today we are interviewing Cindy Burzinski from Wisconsin Voices of Recovery. We will be talking about Narcan and the stigma surrounding drug and alcohol use. Wisconsin Voices of Recovery is a statewide peer-run movement that brings together people in and seeking recovery, their family, members, professionals, and allies. This group is working to eliminate the stigma around substance use, disorders, and recovery. They are recovery advocates and all about action. They believe that solutions to today's most pressing issues are grounded in community, and the recovery community is working diligently to ensure a better tomorrow for our loved ones. They do not want to see one more person die from the disease of addiction, and they will do all they can to improve the landscape of recovery in Wisconsin. Welcome back to ICAN.
When you hear the word stigma, what does it mean to you?
As a human being, as a person, I have an experience, but also as a police officer and somebody who's been doing this job for over 2 decades, is really labeling and putting a marker on somebody for an experience that they're going through or an issue that they're trying to overcome. And stigmatizing an individual is like branding, and it's very, very difficult to overcome when an individual when a stigma is placed on somebody. And so, we work on that obviously in our profession too, understanding and appreciating the impacts of stigmatizing. And so, as it relates to law enforcement and relates to stigma, particularly those who are recovering from substance, that is something that we're working to address within our profession.
What do you think makes people use stigmatizing language?
Some of the challenges, upbringing and being surrounded by the language. Certainly, being exposed to media and social media and some of the things you hear and see on television, and the interactions you may have with others who use that language, all plays an impact.
That goes along the lines of just lack of education. Um, Not necessarily ignorance, but a little bit along those lines of a lot of people think, your typical substance use disorder is somebody under the bridge, you know, doing drugs or drinking alcohol. That's kind of like that image that we've always given people or, has been out there. And I think with the lack of education and just fear of like the unknown about it, anybody with a substance use disorder, I mean, it can be anybody from, your parents, your siblings, your partner, the person next door to you, your boss at work, the person next to you in the gym. You don't know. And what we don't know, we do tend to fear that. So I think it's a lot of education about substance use disorder, about the disease itself, actually showing people that it is a disease and it's not just a choice that people are making. I think that goes a long way. And, the more we do as communities to put the word out there, put the message out there, show that we have resources in place, that's all great steps that we're taking to hopefully destigmatize, substance use disorder.
The use of stigmatizing language itself just reinforces stigma. And so, starting at that point where changing your language, that can really impact how stigma moves forward or stigma gets reduced by changing that language.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody goes to the doctor and tends to lie about how much they use alcohol. So it just is another form of stigma. Everybody's scared to do that for their own doctor to judge them. So, we have people out here judging things that they don't know about or things that they don't know about us. And, I myself am guilty of it. So, I think we, as communities, as long as we keep up with education and have the conversations with people, little by little, hopefully we can kind of get past the stigmatizing language and have people not fear reaching out for help.
Right off the bat, we've got to remember that people are people and not a product of their discretions. And I think when we use language like the word addict, for example, it's very defaming. And as recovery allies, it's important that we use terms like person in recovery, because that implies that there's hope of recovery and it gives people a chance to transcend beyond that label. I know that I was once labeled a felon, and I wrote that a mugshot should not define who I am, nor should it define the lives of people who are now living for a greater purpose. I believe if we interchange the word mugshot for label, the same principle holds true. So before like the system can be capable of recognizing change, individuals must understand the power that labels and stigmas hold. So I believe it's really important, like I said, that we just use the proper language and recognize that people in recovery have all the chance at making a full recovery in their lives if we allow them to. And let's not let the label limit that.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to ICAN. Today we're interviewing Cindy Burzinski from Voices for Recovery. How are you? Thank you for being here today, Cindy.
I'm good. Thank you.
Tell me, what is Wisconsin Voices Recovery? What is it?
So Wisconsin Voices for Recovery is a peer-run advocacy organization that is a part of the UW Department of Family Medicine and Community Health at UW-Madison. And so what we do is we work to connect people, people in recovery, those that are affected friends or family members, and allies across the state.
Cool. And what is your background and how did you get involved with Wisconsin Voices for Recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is in mental health and substance use disorder counseling. What brought me to that is I grew up in a family environment where there was addiction for a while and then a history of addiction generationally. And so I became interested in psychology. And so I went and did my undergrad in psychology, and then I thought, well, I want to help people as well. And so then I went for counseling. Throughout that time, I was also interested in research, so have that science background as well.
So did that help you with recovering being in a family of addiction? Did that help you?
Yeah, well, lived experience is definitely helpful because in some instances I can relate deeply to people that have had similar experiences. I can't relate to everybody because everyone has their own separate experiences with addiction and recovery. But yeah, it definitely helps me to have that understanding on that more experiential level.
Okay. What does Wisconsin Voices for Recovery do exactly?
Yeah, so we have a number of programs. One of our main initiatives is to focus on eliminating stigma across the state.
Okay, yeah, that's been really bad.
Yeah, and that's stigma for both substance use disorders, recovery, and harm reduction. So we have large efforts for that. We do events every year, a couple of them, to raise awareness about stigma. We also attend other events, and we have a large social media presence. So we do have people interviewed to share their recovery story. We do a podcast each month, and then we also have a couple other programs. And so one of the programs is called ED2 Recovery. And so for that program, we fund recovery community organizations to provide peer support in emergency departments for those that are coming in for an opioid use or a stimulant use disorder. And then we have our naloxone program. And so our naloxone program is a program where we distribute naloxone boxes, which is a type of opioid rescue kit, across businesses and organizations across the state to increase access to naloxone for use in emergency, but also if somebody just wants to take it to have. And so the purpose of this is to reduce the risk of fatal opioid overdose across the state.
Yeah, we got one in our lodge, and I was so happy and it was hard getting it in there because of the stigma. Because first thing you hear out of the people is, well, they're just going to do it again. Why help them? But it's not about that. It's about saving lives, not
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about what stigma is for our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a good definition here. So stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. So it's a negative thing. It's a judgment that is placed on somebody or a circumstance or a quality.
Can you also describe what is harm reduction and what does it include?
So SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, describes harm reduction as emphasizes engaging directly with people who use drugs to prevent overdose and infectious disease transmission, to improve physical, mental, and social well-being, and offer low barrier options for accessing healthcare services, including substance use and mental health treatment.
Why is there stigma around harm reduction?
I think it's the same thing. So fear, lack of knowledge, and things being passed down, beliefs being passed down generation to generation. And so for those of people that may not know what harm reduction includes, it can include things like access to opioid overdose reversal methods such as naloxone. It can include drug testing such as fentanyl test strips or xylazine test strips. It can include syringe services, so needle exchange programs, and other areas where, and these are called overdose prevention centers, and there's other names for them as well, but overdose prevention centers are places where people can go. They have substances that they have purchased wherever. They can go to these centers, and there's people there that know how to recognize and respond to an overdose. So if something were to happen, they have that immediate care there.
I hear there's a lot of stigma related to substance use disorders and recovery. Is this true?
Yes, it is true. There's a lot of stigma, and it's for substance use disorders, for recovery, and for harm reduction. Stigma is very negative consequences, so it's that negative label. And so people can internalize that, take that with them, and it can cause a barrier to seeking help.
Oh, that's the same. Why is there so much stigma?
I think it's a number of things. So there's fear, definitely. It's a lack of knowledge. It could be passed down generationally. And so, and sometimes people have, a lack of knowledge because they also have fear about, finding out more. And so all of these things interplay with each other. And so let's say you've got somebody that for generations there's been a negative stigma or negative belief about a particular person, circumstance, or quality that's kind of been passed down. And so to change that belief involves, doing something new, doing something different. And there can be fear in that as well. And so, a number of factors. And the main thing to reduce that stigma is to raise awareness. Bring knowledge, have conversations.
What are some of the damaging effects of stigma that you've experienced?
Well, just in my personal story, a lot of things to do with like the healthcare system and looking for treatment facilities or kind of when you're in that crisis moment, going to the emergency room and kind of feeling that stigma of you're just another person with a substance use disorder. We're just going to put you in a room and kind of forget about you for a few hours, and then kind of, the typical thing, what I hear a lot of is you're not bad enough. So pretty much send you on your way. And for me, that got to the point where I went into the emergency department, and I wasn't just in the middle of a binge. I was in a psychosis where it just got overlooked because I think they just had that, just that idea that just using alcohol, just drunk, just, all those things that come with it. But them kind of like overlooking that almost cost me my life. You hear a lot about in the recovery community how withdrawal doesn't get taken very serious in the emergency department, and everybody's bodies are very different, and everybody goes through withdrawal very differently. For me, I was in a 4-week binge, and that was long enough to get my body completely dependent on alcohol. And again, the emergency room was come back when you get worse. And I did that, but to the point where I had to have a seizure on their floor in their waiting room until they actually took me serious and medically detoxed me. I see and hear a lot of that now in the recovery community, that you're not bad enough, you're not in withdrawal, just those things that can be deadly.
People are reaching out for help, right?
Mhm.
And to be told you're not bad enough, what message is that sending?
I think it goes too with, people not wanting to go get help then, because they kind of know what, if they've been there before, they know what they're going to get. It definitely prevent people from going and getting help and seeking out those resources.
Why does stigma have such a negative influence on people battling substance use disorder when seeking treatment?
No one likes feeling judged. No one likes feeling like a disappointment, and no one likes feeling embarrassed. And all of those words can be what someone feels on the inside when they have substance use disorder. And I think when you're seeking treatment, there's twofold reasons why, stigma can negatively influence that. And one is even seeking help in the first place. So a lot of my patients that come in, we are a treatment center, so they know it's kind of an open door and they're hoping that it's non-judgmental, but they get very fearful over other providers maybe that are going to judge them, or even us if we're going to judge them for things that they might have done when they're using substances, or even getting to the point where they've gotten to before. And they don't want to be viewed that way, because who does? And there's this negative stigma around substance use disorder that people with diabetes or epilepsy may not experience in that regard. And I think the other side of that is, and I may use MAT, interchangeably, but in MAT in general, some people might feel that their family members, their peers will judge them if they get started on a medication-assisted treatment, and they get stigmatized from their peers in the community. So there's two reasons of why stigma may negatively influence getting that treatment, because no one wants to feel that way as a human. So it's all about kind of meeting people where they are and realizing that recovery isn't a one-size-fits-all. So what's good for one person might not be the best for another.
How does stigma against people perpetuate substance use disorder?
Well, I know for myself, when I was struggling with substance use, I felt immense guilt and shame. Society enforces the idea that those with addiction are marked or failures, less than, and that they're never going to do anything or amount to anything. They should not be given employment, housing, or respect. Due to my drug use and my bad choices that came along with it, I was often shunned and disregarded as well. And all this negative feedback, along with my own thoughts and my own internal shame, led me to continue using. So I feel like the cycle keeps going rather than is helped to get stopped at some point. I feel like stigma just enforces continued use. I felt inferior and less than when I was using, and definitely not worthy of being happy. For many years, I felt like everyone was right, because why was I constantly going back to using drugs? Why was I constantly getting incarcerated? Why was I not taking care of my son that so desperately needed me? I had accepted the fact that I would always be in active use and I would die at the hands of substances. These beliefs that contribute to the stigma of addiction caused me to avoid asking for help, which in turn never allowed me to be educated on my disease or get treatment for my mental health.
Why is stigma such a problem?
Yeah, stigma is such a problem because it prevents people from seeking help. It causes shame. It kills hope. really. And so, you know, I've heard of many accounts from people that, let's say they've gone into the emergency department, they have a past history of substance use disorder, and they need medical care. Being looked at in a certain negative way can prevent them from getting medical care. And I know at least one instance where somebody had a legitimate medical condition, an infection, and went for care, but because of their history, they were turned away, and they ended up passing away from that medical condition.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a couple people I've talked to that have gotten opioids for pain or whatever, and then they're looked at funny because they need more. You know, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just a good example of how the stigma is, like, it spreads, right? And so it even spreads to folks that might not have a history of a substance use disorder. So maybe they have a chronic pain condition and they are having a pain flare. So then they go into the emergency department and they're seen as drug seeking, even though they don't have a history, there's a legitimate reason. And so that stigma can transfer to other situations as well.
Shifting now to the topic of harm reduction, can you tell me about Narcan and how it works?
So the way that Narcan works is it comes into the brain and it knocks opioid molecules off of the opioid receptors.
Okay.
And then the Narcan binds to those receptors for a short period of time, which restores breathing temporarily. The effects don't last for very long, like 30 to 90 minutes. And so it's very important that somebody who's been administered Narcan is connected with medical attention. So whenever Narcan is administered, it's really important to first call 911. The other thing that's really important is if somebody appears like they are suffering from an opioid overdose, it may not be an opioid overdose. It might be another medical condition. It might be a heart attack. And so calling 911 is really important just because of how Narcan works and it being temporary, and it's not a solution for another medical condition.
Talking to the police, I've heard that a lot of times now the Narcan has been administered more than once. Why is that?
So you can never tell how much, like, the strength of the opioids in the system. So now, as I'm sure you've heard, as everybody has heard in the state, so fentanyl is working its way into opioids and other substances too. And so depending on how strong the opioid is, depending on if there's fentanyl and how much fentanyl, more than one dose of Narcan might be needed to reverse that overdose.
Okay. How does one recognize an opioid overdose?
Yes, so there are several signs and symptoms of an opioid overdose. And you're going to want to look at 5 different areas. You're going to want to look at breathing, skin, body, noises, lips, and fingertips. And so first off, you're going to want to look for breathing that is slow, shallow, or is stopped.
Okay.
You're going to want to look for skin that is pale, gray, or clammy. The body is going to be limp, unresponsive, or unconscious. The person might be making loud noises, such as loud snoring or loud gurgling noises, and lips or fingertips might be blue or bluish. So these are the symptoms of an opioid overdose.
You have naloxone boxes installed in over 2/3 of the Wisconsin counties. Can you tell me a little bit about the naloxone program?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a naloxone box here. This is what it is. It is a type of opioid rescue kit, and these are being installed in organizations and businesses across Wisconsin. I think we've got over 375 installed now.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very exciting. So we have on the outside of the box the signs and symptoms of recognizing an opioid overdose. These little tear-off instructions, they're perfect to fit in your pocket, and it tells you how to administer Narcan. So when this opens here, you see we have a CPR mask. So this is for if somebody is not breathing. This can be used as a barrier of extra protection. And then we've got the nasal Narcan here. So we have one kit, at least one kit in each box, depending on the area. So let's say it's a high overdose spike area. There's, fentanyl has been found to be in that area. Organizations might put more kits in here as well because more doses might be needed. So yes, this is a really important resource to have access to in the community for people to just have access to, for both emergency purposes, and also we encourage people to just take the Narcan out of the box to have. To be safe. And we've gotten a lot of requests also outside of these boxes by family members. Like I have somebody saying, like, I have a loved one that uses opioids and I'm worried about them. Could you send us a kit of Narcan?
Now, we have one at our Elks Lodge, the Watertown Beaver Dam Elks Lodge. And tell me, what happens when you open it?
Yes. So when you open the box, we actually get notified electronically that the box has been accessed. And then we reach out to the business or the organization that has the box and we let them know the box has been accessed. And so the reason for this, it's for most efficient Narcan replenishment. So then, you know that, okay, someone accessed the box, we're going to replenish it right away for the next time in case somebody needs it.
What do you think of the percentage of the Narcan taken is actually used, or is it open more because people are curious?
That I don't know. It's really hard to say. It depends on organization. It depends on area. So let's say we just installed a bunch of new naloxone boxes at a particular campus. Students are going to be very curious, so they might be opening the boxes more often to take a look. But let's say you put a box in a high overdose risk area and everybody in the community learns about the box, there's a lot of using going on, they might be accessing the box a lot to get the Narcan to have. So it really varies. I can't say one way or the other for like a broader,
Yeah, mine has been opened, 4 times now, I think, and 2 of the times the box was taken, but I have not heard of any of it being used. I think it was just taken to take home or whatever, but.
And that's important. So one of the draws to this program is that we try to keep it as anonymous as possible. So there's other harm reduction methods out there where you might have to add some information, check in, things like that. For this, the concept is for it to be anonymous, so you can have it, take it. It doesn't need to be an emergency. The whole goal is to get as much Narcan out into the Wisconsin communities as possible to decrease that risk of fatal opioid overdose.
And that also takes the stigma away also.
Yes, the more common something is, the more widely accepted it is, and the less power stigma has. And that's really important. Really, really important. We ran into some challenges when we first started this program with stigma, harm reduction, and actually I have a couple quotes that I'd like to read about that I find very interesting, just right along those lines of stigma. So when we first got started, we heard we don't want people to think we have a problem in our community.
Yep, that's what I got at the Elks Lodge. That was one of the things.
And that's a big one. That's a big one. And so when that happens, we have these discussions about fentanyl. We can't control fentanyl going into substances out there, right? But we can control how to save lives. And so fentanyl is getting put into lots of things. It's not just opioids, it's stimulants. There's been reports of it being in marijuana as well. And so we need to have these safety tools available. So we have conversations around that, just about, the fentanyl in there. And it's not about there's a problem here, there, or wherever. It's about safe communities, like making for a safer community. And then we've got, the other quote, the second most common one that we received, we don't want those people coming in our community. And so it's like, well, wait a second, in this type of stigmatizing comment, we talk about fire extinguishers, and we talk about fire extinguishers with the other comment too. We don't want people to think we have a problem in our community. So you don't abandon fire extinguishers because you don't want people to think, oh, I don't want people to think I have faulty wiring in my building. That's just not a thing. And so, why would you deprive another safety measure, right? People have been locating these near AEDs as well. So
that's where ours is.
Yeah. So
and the average age at our Elks Lodge is in the 60s. So my comment to them is, how many of them take opioids for pain? It's there if they overdose, accidentally taking too much medication.
Exactly, exactly. That is also a very important population to consider for this, because overdoses do happen. You know, taking too much, or mixing up doses, or, you know, things compounding. So then we've got, we don't want to encourage drug use. And so in these cases, when people say that, it's, do you want to be a leader in your community? Do you want to be part of the positive movement to make your community safer? Like, you know, that's something that, you know, it's a positive thing, and it's really important. And then the last one that we've gotten at least twice, EpiPens are expensive. Why should drug addicts, so stigmatizing language, get something for free?
Yeah.
So we talk about how our focus is distributing naloxone, and we're fortunate enough to be funded to be able to do that. And other organizations move the EpiPen thing forward, right? And it's not fair to penalize one effort just because another effort isn't moving forward as fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did this program actually get started?
Yes. So this program started in 2020 in response to the increase in opioid overdose deaths across the state.
So it's fairly new.
It is fairly new, yes. In that first year, it was a slow start, but as the word got out more and we started to get past some of that stigma and people realized this is an important safety measure, the program started to grow, and then it exponentialized.
So what else can you tell us about Narcan and harm reduction and what Voices of Recovery does?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to talk a little bit about is harm reduction stigma. So there is this stigma out there, and I was trying to think of a good metaphor for comparison purposes earlier today. And harm reduction is really a method to help meet people where they're at, right? We want to support well-being, we want to support health based on what someone is ready for. And so the stigma against harm reduction is essentially saying that we don't care that there's, we don't care. We don't care if you're ready or not ready. We're not going to give you something that is meeting you where you're at. And that's, that's not right, right? And so thinking about, let's say you have this kid that just learned to tie their shoes and they just went to kindergarten. It would be a similar thing to say, okay, kid, now tomorrow you get to go and learn calculus at the college level. And we don't care that it's hard, and we don't care that you're not ready. Go do it, and we're going to sit there and judge you too. It's like the same thing, right? So why wouldn't, we wouldn't do that to a kid that's not ready. Why would we do that to somebody who might be struggling with trauma, who might be struggling with a whole host of other, situations, concerns, challenges? Why would we not meet them where they're at?
What has been the biggest challenge for Voices of Recovery?
The stigma. And it just fuels the effort to raise even more awareness. So regarding that, we have a Speak Out on Stigma initiative that we have going on. And Speak Out on Stigma is where we provide a list of questions to someone in recovery, an affected friend, a family member, an ally, an organization. We say, pick one or two questions, and we'll ask you those questions on camera, have you respond, and then we post those every week. So every Monday we post a Speak Out on Stigma. Yeah, and what that is, it's to raise awareness about stigma.
And you've shared this, or you'll be sharing this with us today.
Yes.
On the show.
Yes, we do have some videos. And so at this point we have a wide variety of perspectives. We've got people that have experienced stigma themselves. We've got people in healthcare that are sharing their perspective of stigma. And we also learn about the destructive impact of stigma, just that lived experience of people trying to get treatment and why stigma is so harmful, what the barriers that it actually put in front of people that were just trying to get help.
Have you noticed a difference since Voices of Recovery's program has gone forward with naloxone and stigma and all that?
Yeah, definitely. So the naloxone program, the requests keep increasing. So that's really good that people are interested in supporting the safety across Wisconsin. So there's definitely been a change there. With the Speak Out on Stigma, what I'm finding is that people are really enjoying the effort. So after every interview I do, we stop recording, and then, I thank everybody, and I'm always hearing, thank you for this effort. This is really important. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad this opportunity exists for us to bring together our voices. So the more people that we have represented, the more sectors, the more areas in Wisconsin we have represented, the bigger the voice, because the more voices there are. And with that, we can eliminate stigma. We can make change.
How does the viewers out there, how do they reach Wisconsin Voices of Recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can reach us through our website. They can also reach us through our Facebook page. So just look up Wisconsin Voices for Recovery on Facebook. We're also on YouTube. We're on SoundCloud. SoundCloud is where we put our podcasts. And all of this we share on Facebook as well. If you're interested in contacting me directly, you can reach me at Wisconsin Voices for Recovery at famed.wisc.edu. That's our email address. So the Wisconsin Voices for Recovery is all one word, and that at famed.wisc.edu.
And all this information will be included on at the end of our show. Is there anything else you would like to talk about Wisconsin? Anything Wisconsin Voices of Recovery, naloxone? What would you like to tell our viewers out there?
Learn how to administer Narcan.
Yeah.
It's very easy. We hold virtual trainings twice a month for free. You can call in. We post the links on our Facebook page. It's just a Zoom call. It is the second Wednesday of the month from noon to 12:30, and the fourth Wednesday of the month from 6:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. So anyone can call in at any time. Please reach out if you have any questions about anything, and we can connect you. We also have some additional video clips that we'll end with. We asked people, what would you want people to know and remember about people who are in or seeking recovery? And so we have some important words that we'll end out.
Cool. Thank you so much for being here today. I really
absolutely
enjoyed all your information, and we are working on getting Narcan in every lodge in the state. There's 27 lodges.
That's great.
And my goal as the Drug Awareness Chairman for Watertown is talking to the Taverns Association League, because I believe every tavern, every bar should have a Narcan box in it.
Yeah, that's really important. We do have an naloxone box in one, maybe two bars. We have some 375. I don't know but I know we have some in a couple bars. Yeah. So it's really important. Oftentimes when people go to bars, they might use other substances that they bring in. It's possible. Same thing with nightclubs, concert venues. These are all important places where substance use can happen.
Yep, and the only thing holding it back is stigma.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here today, and
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time.
What would you want people to know and remember about those who are seeking or in recovery?
I often hear people say that using is a choice. I lost my husband of 28 years to an overdose, and someone at his funeral commented to me that, what did he expect? Chris was so much more than his disease, and I can assure you that using drugs was no longer a choice. He just was consumed by his disease, and it killed him. And I share this personal experience with all of you. First and foremost, I want people to acknowledge that those who struggle with substance use are human beings that need to be treated as such. The disorder is the only illness that people are looked down upon for enduring. I always say, like, cancer patients do not get discriminated against. People actually outstretch their hands to help. People that are in recovery or seeking recovery are fighting for their lives. They literally are fighting for their lives. They need compassion and empathy. They need understanding. People are dying of overdoses at an unprecedented rate these days. And without the support, they will continue to increase. I challenge people to look at individuals seeking recovery or in recovery as this could be my loved one. Put a face to the person. I think that may help break just make it more humanizing rather than the way that society just portrays everything. And also educate yourself about substance use disorder and mental health. I can assure you that no one wants to suffer from this illness.
Their path to restoration relies on their ability to perceive hope. I know that as an individual in recovery, I was once completely hopeless when it came to the struggles that I had surrounding my substance use disorder. It took my counselor to actually see the best in me first before I could see the best in myself. And the language she used, the way she supported me, the way she picked me up and encouraged me really gave me that first step toward recovery, that first step toward opening up in rooms, toward talking about the struggles that I had, toward really becoming open and transparent and honest when it came to the addiction that I had suffered. So I think what we really need to do is look at these individuals that are struggling today with substance use disorder and say, here's hope and here's where you find it. And provide those avenues to help overcome the barriers, because for so many, they're just lost. And it just takes that one individual to make a breakthrough that can really change the course of someone's life.
What I'm also hearing is that stigma can destroy hope, and that has serious consequences.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, using improper language and not understanding, like, basically where a person's coming from right off the bat, if you're already feeling in a place where you're down, in a place where you're hopeless, it can take all the wind out of your sails, as opposed to someone picking you up and encouraging you using the proper language can really just make that little change that might make the difference in the way you perceive your day or even just that conversation.
Just to treat everyone as a human. Don't judge that person that maybe made some bad choices, whether legal or not buying food for a substance. Don't judge them because you don't know what it's like walking in their shoes. Or maybe you do, and you maybe didn't do those things, but this person did. We see people that are homeless, and we see people that are CEOs of companies. So addiction and substance use disorder doesn't discriminate against that. And then that everyone's doing the best that they can give in that moment. So what you think someone's best is might not be their best for that day. So someone's best might be going to work and making money for their family and picking up dinner on the way home, whereas someone else's best might be taking a shower that day because they're severely depressed because they didn't have their substance for that day. So kind of knowing that, and the fact that, harm reduction also is extremely important. If no one knows what that is, I'm sure a lot of people do by now, but meeting people where they are. If someone is trying to get sober from opioids or alcohol and they're not ready to quit, say their cocaine or their THC, let's not judge them for that, and let's give them help with what they're ready to quit. The most important things that I would want providers medically and people in the community to know about people seeking or in recovery.